Fabiola Isabel Suano de Souza. Ella nos va a acompañar a distancia. Afortunadamente vivimos en estos tiempos en el que podemos estar así de interconectados. Ella está en la Universidad Federal de Sao Paulo, en Brasil. Ella es profesora de pediatría de esta universidad y centro universitario. Es médico, hizo su residencia en pediatría y posteriormente completó su maestría y doctorado en la Escuela Paulista de Medicina de esta Universidad Federal de Sao Paulo. Es experta en nutrología pediátrica y terapia nutricional enteral y parenteral. Este expertise reconocido por la Sociedad Pediátrica de Brasil. Supervisa el programa de posgrado en pediatría y ciencias aplicadas, así como participa en los grupos de trabajo para la Secretaría de Salud a fin de generar las guías alimentarias para niños con desnutrición y obesidad. Además, forma parte del Comité Ejecutivo de DOHA Latinoamérica con el cargo de Coordinadora de Investigación y Excelencia en Investigación. Muchas gracias, doctora Fabiola Isabel Suano de Souza, por su participación y por esta maravillosa oportunidad que nos da no solamente de escuchar su charla, sino de que este evento haya sido posible. Adelante, el micrófono y la pantalla son suyas.
Invite me, and I say I'm not so good in Spanish language. I can understand. I understand everything, but for talk, I prefer to talk in English or Portuguese. So I will start in English, but I watched everything that was presented in this very nice meeting, and I would like to say thank you so much, Professor Marion and Lourdes, to invite me to participate of this important meeting. So I am here with Professor Gomez, Professor Rafael Escamilla, and the most important persons in Latin America and the world that are studying breastfeeding and the importance of breastfeeding. So it's totally my honor. It's totally a pleasure to stay with everybody here. Just a moment, I pass. Oh, perfect. Now I pass my slides. In this presentation, I will talk something about the importance of breastfeeding in this difficult time that we are living. Especially I will put this idea in the DOHAD context. The opportunity are available to promote breastfeeding in my class today is talk about the importance to reduce inequalities by influence in three important aspects that I choose: neurodevelopment, reducing of chronic diseases like obesity, and finally, I would like to talk with you the importance of breastfeeding in the climate change. So here in this start to the background, firstly, I'd like to remember that the life expectancy is a type of measure of inequality. And around the world, the life expectancy changes very substantially. For example, one child born today in Japan has a life expectancy of 84 years old. In the other rich countries, such as USA, 7 years old, because the impact of chronic disease there in USA, it's higher than in Japan. Here in Latin America, we can see two countries that I choose, Brazil and Uruguay. We are neighborhood, but there is an important difference in the years of life expectancy. And finally, when we see Mozambique, the life expectancy of the child born today is just only 54 years. So we are human beings practically genetically. So what is the question about that? Because why this difference is so important? And in my opinion, today I would like to discuss that the most important thing is the inequalities. In the context of the inequalities and DOHAD perspective in these pictures, I'm showing a concept of DOHAD that everybody knows, but I would like to start with the step which show that the risk of diseases along the life is influenced by interaction between genetic and environment. It's very, very important. So this interaction is more important in the first phases of the life when the organs and system and cells are immature. And during the life, the age and the time, the plasticity decrease, but the deleterious events like nutrition, lifestyle, the older age increase. So what I like to show here is that if you have bad things, bad habits in the first stage of our life, we can increase our risk of chronic disease along all life. But I'd like to put more energy, more attention in the habits and the style of life in the first phase of the life that can decrease our risk of chronic disease along the life. In this context, of course, we can talk about breastfeeding. Nothing more important than breastfeeding and breast milk in the process of prevention diseases and reduce inequalities. Breast milk today can be considered a cellular tissue. Of course, breast milk has carbohydrates, fat, proteins, cells, but cells or microbiota. But it's important that we know that, or we consider that breastfeeding, breast milk is like a cellular tissue, because it's not possible. Because of that, it's not possible to reproduce your benefits and effects with any other type of foods. Here we can show in these pictures that the breast milk has a lot of nutrients, a lot of cells, immune cells, and there are a lot of epigenetic factors that can influence the gene expression of baby in early stages of the life, promoting health along the life. So it's very important, because when we study more about the breast milk composition, you can discover things that's not possible to reproduce, and is totally correlate with the epidemiological aspects to prevent disease. So now in this part, I would like to talk about breastfeeding, the benefits of breastfeeding in neurodevelopment, reducing the inequalities is the principal point that I would like to discuss now. Not just about the neurodevelopmental, simple neurodevelopmental, but the ability to learn cognitive aspect during the whole life. In a prospective study here that I'm showing for you, population-based birth cohort study developed in Pelotas, Brazil, by the group of Professor Cesar Victor, the authors evaluate around 3,000 participants between 2012 and 2030. The participants during this evaluation had around 30 years of age. For these participants was applied IQ tests, educational attainment, and income evaluations. So what the authors find in this study? So participants who are breastfed for 12 months or more versus the participants that practice breastfed less than 1 month had higher IQ scores, more years of education, and higher monthly incomes in reals. So it's very interesting, because all of these results were adjusted for confounding factors. And we can see in this graphic, simple graphic, but it's very interesting graph, that this relation happens in all family income. So it's important for the lower and higher family income, and there is a direct association between the duration of breastfeeding and IQ points. And in the same situation is interesting because the IQ was associated with breastfeeding practice and was responsible for 72% of the income at 30 years old age of this population. So this is like an interaction, but the interaction is dependent of breastfeeding. In the other part of this study, the authors introduced for us very interesting aspects that they put the genetic factors in this analysis. So, of course, we have a lot of factors. It's very complex to understand the IQ, the abilities of neurodevelopment, but they put genetic factors. And in this study, that's the second part of this study, the authors show a positive association between breastfeeding and human capital, and this association remain unchanged after adjustment for a robust genetic predators of attaining school. So it's interesting because we can put a lot of factors, but this association remain. And is, of course, the intelligence is not just IQ punctuation, and we know a lot of people that are very intelligent and didn't receive breastfeeding. So it's important to understand for the aspect that breastfeeding can contribute to better collective indicators in neurodevelopment and income around the life, not just for the person, not just for the family, but for the country. So it's a very powerful investment to reduce inequality. And the second point that I would like to share with you, it's about the reduction of chronic disease, the importance of breastfeeding to reduce a chronic disease such as obesity. The effects in Brazil, for example, more than 60% of the adult population are overweight or obesity. I think in Mexico, USA, the results are similar. And here in Brazil, 74% of the causes of mortality are related of chronic non-communicable disease. And the major important factors associated of that are diabetes, certain types of the cancer, cardiovascular disease. And the majority of that cause are related with obesity. And we know that the overweight and obesity increase faster in poverty people. So when you think about the results of the studies of Professor Cesar Victor in this systematic revision, it's possible to see that breastfeeding is associated with the reduction of the risk of obesity and type 2 diabetes in the children along the life, and associated with the reduction of type 2 diabetes in mothers too. So it's a very important point that we needed to understand and put in practice with our patients. I am a pediatrician, and I need to have a lot of tools to talk with my patients, with my students. So it's a very important point. Why breastfeeding can prevent obesity? So it's totally possible to explain the mechanisms that the epidemiological data showed for us. Breastfeeding, when the child is receiving breastfeeding, they receive a dynamic composition in different phases of the lactation. The breastfeed change the flavor. What is very important during the complementary feed to children, to kids, to children receive easier the new health food. The presence of adipokines, that it's important to control the center of satiety and hunger, and the presence of the epigenetic factors that we can see in the slides, that there are a lot of epigenetic factors that can control the energy expenditure, the energy intake in this situation. So we have a lot of reasons to understand why breastfeeding is associated with the reduction of overweight and obesity. Finally, but not less important, I'd like to talk something about the climate change. The climate change represents immense risk to human health and well-being, and everybody is involved in this. 3.6 billion people living in areas highly susceptible to climate change, and that these areas are increasing very fast. A huge number of additional deaths are expected each year from 2030 to 2050 due to malnutrition, malaria, diarrhea, and heat waves associated with this situation of climate change crisis. And low and middle income countries will be least able to cope, and infants and young children are particularly vulnerable for this situation. So it's a very, very important topic. This picture here, it's our country, the center of our country, Brazil, but we have a lot of pictures related today, the last week, the last month, related for the climate change influence the populations in different parts of the world. So the world poorest didn't cause the climate crisis, but they bear the brunt of it. So the rich countries produce a lot of factors that can influence in bad way the climate change, but the poorest country pay more for it. In this context, I would like to read an important phrase that are present in this paper of Smith in 2019. Breastfeeding is a mitigating and adaptive response, and high breastfeed prevalence strengthens population resilience. So it's very important. Conversely, whole milk formula, and I will include here baby foods in general, ultra-processed foods too, has high environment impacts, is a maladaptive to climate change risk, is vulnerable to supply interruptions, and reduce resilience of populations of infants and young children during disasters and emergencies. We suffered in 3 months ago in south of the Brazil, a flood very important, and we know that a huge number of the babies and mothers that are receiving breastfeeding, and the babies was necessary to stop it during the climate change, the climate disaster. And of course, in the other hand, breast milk is a natural renewable food that is environmental safe and green because it is produced and delivered to the consumer without pollution, package, or waste. If you search in PubMed and the scientific literature recently, the number of the papers that was published talking about the impact of breastfeeding and not breastfeeding and health and climate change increase a lot. One of them, that a commentary about that I will share with you, is that here I would like to share three important topics. Infant formula requires max production by dairy industry. We know that is very important for climate change, with plastic and other waste and water waste. It's not just dairy industry, but a lot of trash that are producing during the produce of this type of product. In USA, 6 million tons of metal and 364,000 tons of paper from cow's milk formula package, the material that's necessary for this, is added to landfill each year. So it's incredible when you talk just this for USA. And finally, the production of 1 kilogram of infant formula generates around 4 kilograms of greenhouse gas and waste 5,000 liters of the water, just 1 kilogram of infant formula. And the studies are today compare the impact of global warming potential, terrestrial acidification, freshwater eutrophication, marine eutrophication, and land use when you compare, for example, babies receiving 4-month feeding with infant formula and receiving in the first 4 months breastfeeding. So we can see here is a simple calculation that the authors did in this paper, that if the babies receive breastfeeding, we will have 38%, 72%, 35%, 59%, and 53% reduction of the impact in each one of these factors related of climate change. So this is very, very important when you think not just about the benefits of breastfeeding for the baby, for the society, but especially today in this point for climate change for all population of the world. The take-home message that I would like to share with you is that breastfeeding, of course, is related to short and long-term health promotion. It's impossible to reproduce the composition and effects of the breastfeeding to health of human beings. And the center of this presentation is that there is a potential, very intense potential to reduce inequalities. Inequalities, especially in vulnerable persons, vulnerable communities, vulnerable countries. The defense and promotion of this strategy, it's a commitment for all of us, for this and future generations. And this is my last slide. I'd like to share with you pictures. Picture is a paint for a very famous painter, woman painting in Brazil. The name is Tarsila do Amaral. And the name of this painter is Oma Moeiro. This is a Brazilian, it's not a Brazilian, but it's a fruit. And I'd like to see this picture such as like a woman, with pregnant woman, probably in my mind, because the art is like that. You can see these pictures in your point of view, and I invite you to see in a point of view. For me, is a mother, pregnant woman with a small child, bigger child, running into the grandmother, probably, that are very happy to receive the family, and a very nice environment with clean water, clean air, fruits, vegetable, and they are receive the family to talk, drink, and eat very, very nice afternoon tea or coffee with bread, with cake, and the children can can play around this place. This is my point of view, of course. And we look at the word once in childhood. The rest is memory, is the last phrase that I would like to share with you, is a phrase of Lucy Glick. She won a Nobel Prize for Literature in 2020, and I believe a lot of that. And as I am a pediatrician, and I would like to protect children, not in the future, but today, because the future is today. Thank you so much for your attention.